Emma Watson is a student at Oxford right now, and that's a very big conversation starter.
You've seen her? Everyone, welcome to the next episode of Friday with Friends. Today I'm here with Sachi, and she also went to McMaster. She did not study business, however, she studied health science. This is my second health science guest, and now she's doing a Master of Science at the University of Oxford in the UK. So we're going to get into all of that. Sachi, first question I always ask everyone, can you first share a bit about your upbringing, high school experience, and career interests at the time?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sachi. My pronouns are she and her. I am from Mississauga, so that's where I grew up. And when I did high school, I didn't do a special program or anything. I went to just a regular public high school, my home high school. When I was in high school, I wasn't sure when I was choosing university if I wanted to do science or business. Like I applied to university programs in both domains. I took science and business courses, but then eventually when I got to grade 12, I realized I liked my science courses more than my business courses. So then I decided to pursue the science route. So when I was applying to universities, I applied to science and business programs. I applied to 5 universities. Let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head. Waterloo, McMaster, Western, UofT, and Queens. Yeah, I remember I made a whole spreadsheet for this and everything. And ultimately, I ended up getting accepted to McMaster Health Science, and that's where I ended up going for undergrad.
And was Mac Health Sci your dream school? Can you recall the application and acceptance? Like I heard the acceptance rate is notoriously low.
So I don't know if at the time Mac Health Sci was my dream school because I really didn't know about its reputation until maybe late until grade 12. So can't say that it was my dream school, but it was definitely one of my top three. I visited McMaster during campus tour. I had some upper year mentors who went to the program and they said really, really good things about it. So I really thought like this was a program that was suited for me. And then when I got accepted, that was a really, really great moment. Also because the other two, so I had like three top programs I was aiming for. I think the other two were UofT Life Science and Queen's Health Science. I either got waitlisted or rejected from them. So Mac Health Sci actually just worked out that out of the top three, Mac Health Sci was the one that took me in.
Can you recall the application and acceptance? Because I know it's very hard to get in.
This is also very interesting. So I got accepted. I remember it was May and I came home and I saw the email in my room and I was like, wait, is this actually real right now? And then I checked it again and I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually real. I got into Health Sci. I also had a hard time believing it because nobody from my high school got into health sci from the years above me. Like I remember the upper years that I knew, so those who are a year older than me, they were applying for health sci and they said, "Oh yeah, no one has gotten into health sci from our high school since like who knows how many years." So I was like, "Whoa!" So I'm like the first person from my high school to get into health sci for who knows how long. So it just felt like a very, very surreal type of moment there, especially after I got in the younger years that I knew, like those who were like in grade 11, 10, and 9, they got into health sci afterwards too from our high school. So it felt really great to kind of see that other people from my high school were getting to experience health sci after I got into health sci. So yeah, I definitely have a lot of appreciation for getting accepted into health sci. And I mean, I didn't know about its reputation at the time still, but I guess after I got in and after I got my acceptance, I was like, wow, this is going to be such a great opportunity.
I heard things about the supplemental application, obviously never applied to it myself, but could you describe it briefly? And do you have
Oh
any
yeah,
advice that are like in grade 12 or going into grade 12 that are looking to write this app?
the supplementary. Okay, so the supplementary application is essentially 2 to 3 essays that you write. They're not exactly the same as personal statements because they're a bit more abstract and the questions change every year. So in my year, I had to write 3 essays. One of them was about how like your weakness within a group. There was a science-based question as well, like where they gave us a diagram and we had to analyze it. And then I think the third one was about a community that we are part of and we had to talk about that. I remember, so the questions come out in September of like the school year, so around the time you start grade 12, the health sci questions come out and they're available like online for anyone to read. So you can start reading these things ahead of time and start working on your application ahead of time. And I remember, I think since I heard about it in October or November, I just started brainstorming ideas for the application. I like had my Google Doc, I was writing down ideas throughout the school year, and then I spent the winter break trying to finish it up. And then you have a submission window in February where you submit it. So you have like 3 days, you log on to this McMaster portal, they give you a special invite for it, and you have to like type out your answers again. So even if you did like kind of write it on Google Doc, you can't copy and paste it. You have to type it up all again. And I remember I was super stressed for that because if you entered like tab or shift or tab or enter, I think, it would automatically submit your application. So you basically had one chance to do it correctly and you could not make a mistype at all. Very stressful. Uh, and yeah, I remember just spending a lot of time like working on the essay. Like everyone has very different experiences with the Supp app from what I've heard. Like some people write it the week before. I personally took a lot of time to write it and I spent a lot of time doing external readings as well because I wasn't someone in high school who felt very confident in my ability to articulate. So I had really good ideas in my head, but writing them down on paper, no go, no go. English was not my best subject in high school. So I read a lot of papers in high school about like especially like business leaders who could write about themselves really well and who could hype themselves up really well because that's what you do when you write a supplementary essays. You're hyping yourself up. And that really helped me because I didn't copy them, but I just got an idea of like how do you write about yourself in a good way that's appealing that you're selling yourself to someone. And for me, it was selling myself, I guess, a little bit to help that. And in terms of tips, I've done a few like admissions events and I've talked to a lot of people about health sci. I can't say that I have like I can give or I guess the advice that I like to give everybody is one that when you submit your health sci app, like it's everything is anonymous. So like they don't have your name, they don't have your school, they don't know what grades you have. Um, so they know nothing about you. So you just have to imagine that if someone were to read your essay and they know nothing else about you, like they have to learn about you through that essay. I think the second thing is that everyone's like be be unique and like write your own experiences, but inherently like everyone is already very unique and has their own unique experiences. Like even if there was like 10 people from my high school apply to health sci, just because we're in the same high school doesn't mean we're the same applicant. We're all very different. So use that to your strength. And I remember someone told me this advice in grade 12, which I think honestly really helped me a lot in my application, was it's already implied by applying to health sci that you have an interest in the health sciences and maybe medicine. So you don't need to necessarily say in your supplementary application, oh, I like volunteered at X hospital or I did like X STEM or medical extracurricular, which is why I want to apply to health sci. The act of you applying to health sci at Mac already implies that you will have an interest in this field. So in the Supp app, I didn't write about my experiences like with STEM Club or when I volunteered at the hospital. I instead took a different route to talk about my other extracurriculars, which might be a bit more non-traditional, bit less STEM related, but I think that's what honestly helped me because they also read thousands of these applications every year. So you do want to try and stand out.
Wow, I had no idea about the anonymous. And yeah, that's such a great point with sharing your extracurriculars or, things other than STEM, because I can imagine it gets pretty fatigued over and over reading. Everyone's unique, but essentially the same sentences construed in different ways.
Yeah.
So is it like students that are already in the program reviewing these applications?
It's a little bit of both. So when you get to fourth year of health sci, they invite the fourth year students to read the applications and mark them. So when I was in fourth year, I did get to mark them. But they also have faculty who read them as well. But because there's so many applications, they do recruit the fourth years to help. It's kind of
Got
like our rite of passage, going full circle type of moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's really cool. Question number three, how is the adjustment from high school into university, especially to such a prestigious program like Mac Health Sci?
Oh, there's so many parts to this question. I guess I'll first talk about the social element. So like I said, I was the only one from my high school who got into health sci that year. So this idea that I was going to kind of be starting over was a really interesting experience for me because I didn't necessarily have to be the same person in health sci that I was in high school. I was able to rebuild myself a little bit of a new identity. And I remember I set goals for myself, like, I'm going to be a bit more extroverted. I'm going to maybe not worry too much about like academic validation in a way and focus more on enjoying my time at math. And yeah, just being not afraid of what others think of me, because that's something I felt like I worried about a bit more in high school, because no one at Mac outside knew really who I was, and they didn't know who I was in high school. So this was a chance for me to kind of reinvent myself, which I think really, really helped, because it definitely, like, with every year that I went through health side, my confidence boosted a lot. In terms of the academics, it was like just very different because health sci is also known for having a bit non-didactic or non-traditional way of teaching and assessing. So for example, one of our classes in first year is inquiry, and there's like 15 to 20 of you sitting in a classroom, and there's not necessarily a curriculum. And it's a bit like I can't describe it to people who are not in health sci because it won't do it justice. You just kind of have to be there and experience it yourself. But yeah, like it's like you create your own curriculum, you're in charge of your own learning. And then in cell biology, one of the courses that I also had to take in first year, I remember like we had lectures. We would have lectures every week, but then our assessments were either group projects, which were I remember very difficult, and or the crossword, the notorious crossword, the OCAT. And whenever you talk to other people outside of health sci about that, they're like, "You're doing a crossword for 25% of your mark," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So it was definitely just interesting to adjust to, and I guess it kind of bonded us all together. So that was quite interesting. Um, yeah, and I guess for everything else, like with the transition to health sci, I think, yeah, like I said, every year it got a little bit better, but obviously with second year we had COVID, so I didn't feel like I was socializing as much in second year. And second year is when you have to take is supposedly like one of the hardest years in health sci, mainly because of the notorious anatomy and physiology course, which is usually involves hands-on labs, but we didn't have that because we were online. So definitely missed out on that. But I think I was still able to maximize my experience. And even with the prestige, I guess, yeah, like with the, I don't know, definitely did feel a little bit like competitiveness amongst my classmates, but it wasn't necessarily direct competitiveness, I would say. It was more that everyone was pushing and to be very high achieving because you're taking all these high achieving students who come from around the country, even from around the globe, and you're putting them into one classroom and everyone's striving to do really well and to get good grades. Like these are students who are used to getting good grades. Um, it can create a sense of like competition and just wanting to strive for the best. And sometimes that didn't come off the best way, and I didn't always enjoy that environment. But I also feel that competition is a little bit of a choice. Like you choose to kind of engage in that and participate in that. Especially when I got to fourth year, I was around less people who kind of thought this way and were competing with each other. And that got a lot better. So I wish I could just honestly like tell my first year self, everyone might try to be one upping each other, but you don't really have to participate in that. Just focus on your own thing.
It's refreshing to hear that in science there's also a very competitive, or there can exist a competitive nature, because in business, oh my gosh, like recruiting for certain areas and just seeing the LinkedIn posts and like the little one up comments, it's like you can really drive yourself mad over those, but I
Hmm.
really said it is a choice.
Yeah,
And understanding something that I had to learn was that someone else's win is not my loss. And so if
exactly.
they're having, I don't know, if they're getting research positions, if they're getting internships, like I can look from afar and be like, okay, good for you. Now let me focus on my own thing. So I think that's a very
Yeah.
universal student experience, especially like at a really good school, a really like top program. You're going to have that happen, but it's really about how you control it. And clearly you've
Exactly.
done so well without having to feed into all of that. Question number 4: what are the traditional paths for Mac health science students? I think number one, obvious, is medicine, but are there other ones as well?
So actually, Health Guy, I don't know if they still have this on their website, but they do kind of show where most alumni go after graduation because they ask us to take a survey. So yes, a lot of people do pursue medicine, but I wouldn't necessarily like the program pushes them to do medicine. Like I think a lot of people who do medicine after health sci were people who wanted to do medicine since they were in high school. But health sci just kind of facilitated that process and encouraged them maybe to pursue this field. Uh, I know a lot of people who are still like pursuing like health professional schools. So there's like dentistry, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech language pathology. Um, so they're still working in health professions, just not in medicine. There's some people who go to grad school and do research, so they might be doing a master's. And actually, one of my closest friends is doing like his PhD here at Oxford as well from Mac Health Sci. So a lot of people are doing research, and the research is very, very broad too. Like some people can be looking at like the social side of health and social determinants of health, and some people might be looking at the more biomedical side or the more biomedical lens of health. So the research interests are quite vast. I think the nice thing about health sci is they do definitely train us a lot in like soft skills, so people can pursue other fields as well, whether they want to pursue like writing, journalism, entrepreneurship. Uh, it's a bit less common. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the norm. It's more of the exception, and maybe it's not talked about as much. Again, this is like why I created Invite Health, which I guess we'll go into a little bit later. But I would say medicine is definitely, I guess, the most localized profession and maybe the most popular. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but definitely a lot of students do try to pursue medicine after graduation, but that's like not the only thing you can do with a health sci degree. And you've like got to chat with another health sci student who even like switched and went into business. So some people might entirely like switch fields too. They might have realized like health sci is not for them. Like I'm going to pursue like engineering or computer science or business instead, which is very inspiring to see.
I think it takes a lot of bravery to, go to a diverting path. And I know a girl that was in health sci and she decided to go to law school. Now she's in law
Mhm.
school.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, that's super cool. And, I think it's nice that the program is designed in a way where there's a lot of inquiry, critical thinking, and it sounds like expression and creativity, which I like being a non-STEM student, I would not usually associate those words with science. But yeah, that opens a lot of doors. And I think there's a lot of pressure as well for high school students to pick, you know.
Yeah.
So
Oh, for
having
sure.
a program like health sci for high achieving students that leaves doors open is so important. I wish more programs were like that. For those looking to get into med school, when do most students start studying and writing the MCAT, doing research, and applying?
I would say from what I've seen, most people most people I know wrote the MCAT after second year of health sci. So they would spend the summer like studying for it and then they write it because you can start applying to med schools when you're in third year of your university degree. Like a lot of med schools will take you in after third year. As for research, I think that depends. At the end, like people didn't really, I guess this was like kind of the health sci culture, but people didn't really talk about their research positions as much. So some people might have started in first year, but I didn't really know about it. Some people might have started in second year, or maybe their only research was like after third year and onward. So I think it really depends on you and what you're interested in. Because I also know people who got into med school and they didn't do much research either. Like research is not necessarily a requirement to get into medical school. Uh, yeah, but people usually do like MCAT after second year. Some people might start it a bit earlier. I think I've even met some people who wrote the MCAT after grade 12 of high school because you can start writing it at that age. Uh, and then people do research at any point during their undergrad. But we also are required to do research when we do our third year project course and our fourth year thesis. Um, so I don't know too much about like extracurricular research that people have done before they got into med school.
Obviously, I'm a business student or I just recently graduated, and there are certain things that you're supposed to do if you want to break into the top consulting, top banking
Yeah.
firm. If you are trying to get into med school, what are some of the checklists? And checklists aren't perfect. There's definitely like ways you can get in otherwise, but is there like a very vanilla or bread and butter case of a student applicant?
I guess what we call that is like kind of like cookie cutter applicants.
Yeah.
I would say like things that I notice that are common amongst the medical students, I guess that get in. Usually, like a lot of them do have like research experience. Um, like they get involved in research in some capacity, but again, I don't know the details of it. Usually are quite involved, I think, in a lot of extracurriculars too. The nice thing about health sci is that we didn't have a lot of class time, like maybe 15 to 20 hours a week, depending on your electives. So with only 15 to 20 hours a week of class, you have a lot of time to do extracurriculars. So I saw like a lot of the people that I saw went to med school, like, with not just involved in like one extracurricular, but maybe multiple. And then they kind of moved their way up as they got older. So like maybe first year they were a general member, and then by second or third year they were on the exec team where they're the one running the organization. There's also a lot of like extracurriculars within health sci. Like health sci has its own like special extracurriculars, like the musical, the fashion show, the student government. So people are just involved in a wide range of things. But yeah, there's also like you have to take certain things, you have to meet certain requirements to apply to med school too, depending on the med schools you're applying to. Like you need to have references, you need to write personal statements, you need to write the MCAT for most schools, have a certain grade point average. So you have to just check also the med school, check off all the med school requirements. And I think people kind of research this early on to make sure that throughout their undergrad, they are fulfilling these requirements.
Why did you decide to go to grad school, specifically Masters of Science route, rather than the med school route? Was this a difficult decision for you to make?
Yeah, so this is actually what kind of kickstarted me to start Invite Health. So I was one of those health science that also did apply to med school. So I wrote the MCAT in second year, very cookie cutter. I did my applications in third year, and I applied to 3 medical schools, and I got rejected by all 3 of them. And looking back, I guess that was, I guess, one of the greatest things that could happen to me. Of course, I definitely like it's not great because like I also felt bad that I felt like I had wasted my summer studying for the MCAT, and I felt like I wasted my referee's time writing reference letters for me. And I think I knew deep down when I was applying to medicine that I was just kind of doing this because everyone else around me was, or there was 2 main reasons. I was applying to medical schools because everyone around me was, and I really didn't know what else to do outside of that. I was only in second year, and like you said, like everyone feels kind of like they have to know what they're doing very early on, even from high school. So I was like, oh yeah, like, okay, I'll just apply to medicine. But then when I didn't get in, I wasn't super, super devastated to the point, um, like where yeah, I wasn't like I guess I wasn't like super, super devastated. It was just more eye-opening to be like, okay, so you didn't get in, but you're not that upset. So maybe this is not something that you actually really wanted to do. And I remember I was having conversations with people who like were considering grad school, and I think I was slowly leaning towards grad school as opposed to maybe like working because I still like being in a school environment. And this specific field, translational health sciences, was introduced to me, I think, in third year by one of my upper year classmates. Then I just started thinking about it a lot. I'm like, I could actually see myself studying this because it's very pragmatic, like it's very real world application, and it combines a lot of the things that I'm interested in. So when I remember after third year, I was like, do I write the MCAT again and apply to medical schools, or do I just work and enjoy my summer and go all into grad schools? And I remember I was very stressed about the decision, like even trying to tell my parents about it, because I knew my parents were supportive, but I I think I was also worried like they would be disappointed that I didn't pursue medicine, or that they thought I was kind of like giving up after only one attempt. But I really was just like, you know what? I'm not going to like go like 50% into like 2 different things like med school and like grad school. I just want to go 100% and dive into grad school applications. So I told my parents, I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to apply to med school. I'm not going to rewrite the MCAT this summer. I'm going to like work at Shad. I worked at Shad Waterloo, and I'm going to go all into applying to grad schools. And they were supportive, but it still felt like a very difficult decision because even in September, I remember I had a nice like breakdown moment, like talking to my family too about it. I felt like guilty. And I remember I was overworking myself in September because I guess I wanted to prove not just to I thought I was saying like I wanted to prove to other people, but I think it was more just proving to myself like I can be successful without going to med school. Because I definitely get that feeling from health sci. Like some people were just like I had to constantly kind of explain myself whenever I told people I wasn't going to med school, and I would constantly explain like what I'm planning on studying and that, like I'm going to do exciting things even if it's not going to med. And I guess maybe it was just exhausting and I wanted to work extra hard. Like I was being very hard on myself, being like, you need to do like really, really well to prove that you can be successful without going to med school. And then eventually, like I think at the end of September, that just kind of collapsed on me. And I was like, why am I putting so much pressure on myself? And I remember just having a conversation with my parents about it. So it was a very difficult decision because even though I knew I wanted to do grad school, I couldn't help but feel that I had to work extra hard to kind of prove to myself and prove to others that I could be successful without going to med school because that's what everyone in this program does. Um, but yeah, I remember that was that same night that I had my little breakdown moment was also the same night that I started Invite Health. And I think that's also partially why I started Invite Health. I'm like, I'm going to create something that's really successful uh, to show that like, I can do these great things without going to med school. So it was definitely just a very interesting time to start a fourth year. And obviously, I'm grateful for that experience because it definitely shaped me into who I am now. But I think that just goes to show that it was not an easy decision, but it definitely gets easier when you do have a system of support behind you and knowing that I guess you can like for me now, like I can reassure my fourth year self that everything did work out okay.
I think I very much relate to what you said. Like you knew, I guess, when you were rejected from med school, like I think the automatic response for someone that gets rejected is I'm gonna do it again if they really, really
Yeah.
want it. How is Oxford? I want to know so bad the academia thing, all the, UK, are there castles? Like what does your program in translational health science entail in very basic terms for a non-science student? And yeah, like what was it like showing up?
Oh, it's really an incredible place. Like it's one of these experiences where every day I wake up and I'm just so, so grateful to be here. I don't even know where to begin. I think it's talking about like what it's like here. So first off, it's very international. So because again, I only came here with one of my friends who's studying in a different program, but everyone else we're meeting is like it's totally like there's a few Canadians, but you're used to meet when you introduce yourself to people and they introduce themselves to you, they're gonna say that they're from another country. And sometimes there's countries that you've never even heard of before or that I've never even heard of before. So that's just the first part that really inspires me and that I love about Oxford. I also love the history here. So Oxford is 1,000 years old, and consider that's like older than a lot of countries, even older than like Canada. And think about the fact that like modern like air transit is younger than the University of Oxford, like planes and modern medicine. So it puts a lot of things into perspective. And sometimes I just walk around campus and all like, wow. And there are a lot of notable alumni too. So it's interesting to see like in one of the museums they have Einstein's blackboard. So Einstein gave a lecture at Oxford when like a few dozen years ago, and they have the original blackboard that he wrote on when he was talking about physics. And I mean, I don't know anything about physics. Uh, and sometimes you just walk around and there's like little plaques of like, oh, this famous person was here, like Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll, like the author. Like there's signs about him everywhere. People love to hear about all the different celebrities that are here. Like Emma Watson is a student at Oxford right now, and that's a very big conversation starter.
You've seen her?
I have
Oh,
not seen her, but other people I know have, and everyone is trying to see her because she's a master student here.
yeah, because I know she went to Brown.
So if I get to see her this year, that would be really, really cool. Um, and yeah, because it's so old, there's a lot of traditions as well. So for example, we have something like also Oxford works on a collegiate system, so kind of like how UofT has different colleges you can be signed to. Oxford is a bit of the
Mm.
same way. There's 39 different colleges, and each college has kind of its own character and unique personality, kind of like Res with Mac. Uh, and one of the things that is like very traditional is like one, like they have chapels in all of them. So they have like even songs and services every Sunday. Uh, and then also the dinners are very formal. Like you have to dress up for them and you wear something called the sub which is just like yeah, like a nice like dressed up outfit. And then you wear a special like gown on top, and like if you're a student, you have to wear that. And then they always do a Latin prayer at the start of dinner, and they serve you a three-course meal in the dining hall. They're beautiful. Uh, so that's just a very unique experience. Like I've never had to dress up so many times for this many events before, except when I did photography in fourth year. That was a little bit different though. This is just a whole different thing as well. Yeah, there's a lot of Latin written everywhere because you can tell that the school is very old when Latin's written everywhere, but no one really knows Latin anymore. Uh, yeah, so it's just really an incredible place to be, and I feel like I haven't even seen all of it yet, even though I've been here for a few months now. So I'm really looking forward to that this term. In terms of translational, oh, sorry, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, just quick question. Is it enclosed? Like an enclosed campus, like McMaster?
A little bit, yes, but there are tourists who like you can visit it like as a tourist and come in like every day. And because it's a collegiate system, it's kind of like there's no central Oxford University building or
Mm,
area. It's more like there's the 39 colleges spread throughout campus, and those are each like gated off to their own specific students and to other Oxford students. The
mm.
tourists can't really like go into there. Uh,
It's
yeah, it's interesting.
is it a big school? Like it sounds huge.
I would say it's about three times the size of Mac. So
It's pretty big.
you can still walk around. Like I walk around to get everywhere because also the bus, like the roads are, the school was not designed for cars. Imagine like when the school started, they were going around on horses or walking
Yeah.
around by feet, like no cars. Um, so I walk around everywhere. It is probably like three times the size of Mac though. Like if you want to get from one end of campus to another, it probably take you like 40 minutes.
Wow, wow. And yeah, a bit about your specific program.
So translational health sciences, I love giving this spiel to everybody. Uh, in 10 words or less, I like to tell people that translational health sciences is about bridging the gap between research and healthcare practice. Yeah, bridging that gap between research and healthcare practice. And that makes sense to some people and sometimes it doesn't. So usually I like to give an example. So for example, research tells us that exercise is good for us. We've probably seen that many, many times, and you can agree with me, right? Now, just because the research says that, does that mean everybody does exercise and um, follows that research? No, exactly. So translational health sciences then kind of looks at why is this the case? So sometimes maybe people have mobility impairments, so they can't do the same type of exercises that able-bodied people can. Maybe there's not, maybe it's an underserved community and there's not enough like recreational centers or funding for sports. And maybe some people are working multiple jobs, so they don't have time in their day to go and do exercise, so their jobs don't facilitate that. So with translational health sciences, we're looking at what is the problem, like why is this research not being put into practice, and then what can be done about it. So what solutions maybe have we seen in like other countries or in other regions? What kind of technological, policy, educational interventions could we create so that people are benefiting from this type of research? And I think that like exercise is only like one example. You can even say the same about like mental health. Like we have lots of research saying that like for example, mental health illness is rising amongst younger people, or they're rising amongst people of color or marginalized groups. But at what point do we start to say, okay, we know that this is the research, but what are people doing about it? What are our solutions? And maybe we should spend more time like analyzing these solutions, analyzing the root cause of these problems, and trying to create interventions for them so that they can improve later on. Because in health sci, I remember especially we spent a lot of time focusing on the root cause, like understanding the problem and researching the problem, and we write reports or do presentations about it. But I guess 4 months is too short in a semester to like actually come up with a solution and then see it put into practice. And with my master's program, it still is very theoretical. Like we're not necessarily creating things, but we're doing a very deep, like academic theoretical dive into like case studies and taking different taking different views as to these different types of problems, like maybe from an economic standpoint, a climate standpoint, social justice standpoint, and seeing like what like is the root cause of these problems and what has been done and what can we do to address these. Because yeah, at some point, like how much funding are we going to put into like research that's going to say the same thing, like exercise is good for people who are healthier, exercise is good for people with illness, and at one point I would be like, okay, we have a solution, or we're going to put more money into creating solutions so that people can benefit from this. And that's something I'm really interested in, I guess, as someone who's a very entrepreneurial person, like focusing on that. Let's go solve this. And also, it requires you to think from multiple point of views because solutions are not just independent, exist in one field. Like they span across multiple fields. You need lots of different types of expertise, which I also do enjoy because I feel like my interests change like every week, every month.
I was just thinking while you were talking, I understand why you did this program because you're such a builder. Like anyone can look
Yeah.
at LinkedIn and be like, okay, she's a co-founder, she's a builder. And usually we don't like associate academia and like grad school with like being a builder. But this program seems very applicable and very like good for someone that's an executioner, which sounds like you are. So that's
Yeah.
great. And I think it's awesome that we're sharing about this program so that other students that, you know, maybe in health science or science and they're looking for that solution and they didn't get to that part in their semester, like there are programs to do that. What advice do you have for Canadian students looking to pursue grad school abroad? Perhaps advice for both financial, academic, and social considerations.
So I'll share a Notion guide with you that I made. It's a guide called Applying to Grad Schools, and I wrote it based on my experiences. There's a lot of factors you have to consider when you're applying to grad school, not just going abroad, but just in general with grad school, because it is a costly process. It does take a lot of time. Um, and grad school is not necessarily like undergrad where you're going to toss your name in like multiple programs and hope for the best. It's a bit more like calculated and you kind of are making a more personalized application for each program you apply to, whereas undergrad is just like, here are your grades, go apply to these different schools. So I guess like what you have to kind of consider when moving abroad is like, again, I guess most important is like finance for a lot of people. Think about like what are the funding opportunities that exist. PhD students usually get a stipend. So they do get paid when they're studying, but master students don't, unless I guess you have a specific scholarship. Think about like where you're going to do this and like what kind of requirements like you might need like in terms of like visas and stuff. Like for example, for me, I'm a part-time student at Oxford, so I did get a visa to come live and work here as well. Think about also like what the specific program is and what you're trying to study and see if it's like just offered at this university abroad or is it offered at other universities like maybe more local or domestic to you. Uh, like if you're especially if you're doing like a thesis based master's or PhD program where you're doing like your own original research, you do have to find supervisors that align with your own research interests. And yeah, just think about like how long these programs are because like my master's program, I'm extending it to over 2 years, but some people might do it for a bit longer or they might do it a bit shorter for only 1 year. And think about, I guess, also what opportunities the university you're applying to has. So, like Oxford has a very large like international presence, so that's something that drew me to the school. But I actually like there was no other international schools I applied to aside from Oxford because Oxford was the only one that I saw offered translational health sciences abroad. There is translational research program at UofT, and I applied to that as well. But Oxford was the only one abroad that I saw translational health sciences in a way that I kind of wanted to study it. Um, yeah, in terms of academics, think about like your research interest and what you want to study. And like a lot of different universities around the world, like they do list their master's programs, so you can do research ahead of time. I suggest doing that in the summer before the school year starts again, before you write your applications. Just literally make a spreadsheet or make a Google Doc or something and just list all these different programs you might be interested in. And then write down important information such as like how long is the program, where is it hosted, what are you expected to do? Because some master's programs you might be doing your own independent research, but some of them you might be writing essays. Like I'm writing a lot of essays in my program, and I never thought I was going to be doing that. Uh, some of them might have exams, and some of them might have like placements. So think about what kind of experiences you want to get out of grad school as well.
And what about being so far away from your family, your friends? Like, what was that? Stepping off the plane and just being like, okay, this is my home for the next 2 years.
Okay. First off, it definitely did really help that one of my closest friends from undergrad is here with me too. If he was
Oh,
not
nice.
here, that would be a very, very different experience because we're both experiencing Oxford for the first time together. But I can't like I won't lie and say that it was like it definitely wasn't easy the first month, especially because I'm someone who's like very hard on myself and tries to get everything done to a high degree, so perfectionist, as you want to call it. So when I came here in October and I was like, okay, I have to start new school. I'm also working part-time, so I'm gonna do the job and then I'm gonna socialize and meet new people and leave a good impression. And I'm gonna have my like wellness and like my well-being taken care of, like cooking for myself, going to the gym, getting enough sleep. It was a lot. And especially I guess socializing was hard the first time I got here because you're meeting so many different people. And some people you really click with and sometimes you don't, but it can sometimes just be a little bit exhausting on the social battery. And especially when I went out and sometimes I didn't feel like I connected well with people, it did make me miss my friends and family at home. And like, I'm going out to these events and I do wish my friends at home were here with me. Uh, I think I did get over that homesickness after October, though, once I was a bit more settled. And there was a few things that just kind of helped me with that, like definitely regularly checking in on my friends and my family, like through calls. And remembering that, I guess one of the big things that inspired me to choose Oxford was this quote, this quote that says, I read a while ago that if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. And Oxford definitely scared the heck out of me. And knowing that regardless of what happened here, my friends and my family were supporting me. So having their support um, definitely just helped me get through this as well. So even though I did miss them a lot, I knew that like I was going to see them again and that they're actually rooting for me and that they're always going to be there for me. It's not like I was going to lose touch with them or lose my friendship with them.
I said this many, many times. You were a builder, you were an entrepreneur from Greenlight Mentorship to Impact Health, and you had a photography business in your fourth year, Photos by Sachi. It's clear that you're a founder, and that's very innate to you. Can you tell us about each of these ventures and the reasons behind their founding?
Okay, so I'll start with Greenlight mentorship because you're also partially involved with that, and I think that's um, yeah, that in Greenlight mentorship has discontinued, but essentially my two of my classmates, so there are three of us, and we started Greenlight mentorship in March 2020 when the pandemic started. We noticed two things. So on one hand, we have university students at the start of the pandemic when everyone was being sent home. University students were posting on their Instagram stories and offering like, oh, here, like I'm a university student. I'm going to give, if you want to like talk to me about university applications, feel free to reach out to me. So you have one party, which is university students offering advice, and then you have the other party, which is high school students who are reaching out to us individually and being like, hey, I really am interested in your program and your school. Do you mind if we have some conversations about this? So we had these two parties and we're like, why don't we connect them together? So that's how Greenlight Mentorship started. It was a mentorship program where we had mentors, the university students, and mentees, the high school students. We connect them together based on similar interests or similar um, post post grad goals, so that they could kind of connect throughout the pandemic and talk about university, and both parties would benefit from that. And eventually we did expand a little bit to hosting a bit more events like a virtual university fair. We created an Instagram page and built an online presence. And I think I had to look at the exact numbers again, but we definitely did close to like I think like 500 matches maybe. So there was a lot of interest at the time. And I know there were other nonprofits and other startups that were doing a similar thing. So it was nice to see that like our mission like did resonate with a lot of people and that we were able to connect those groups together. So that was Greenlight Mentorship. My photography, Photo by Sachi. So I've actually had that Instagram page and I've been a freelance photographer since I was in grade 10, but I didn't formally start getting paid maybe until like grade 12. And at first, photography was just kind of like a hobby. Like I liked being creative and I took pictures of my friends in high school. And then I made an Instagram page being like, it was called Channon Photography because my last name is Chan and I had a Canon camera. So it was like Channon Photography. And it was really fun. And then eventually I just started like building my way up. I worked for the yearbook and I started taking pictures of like all the school events, like with all the school clubs, every sports event, all the teachers, all the students. That was a really good way for me to just kind of build my portfolio. And then when I got to Mac, especially after we were allowed to return back to school after COVID, I just started photographing a lot more events and meeting a lot of people. And I think this, my experience in fourth year with how busy I was with photography, like shooting events every week, just really proved to me how effective word of mouth marketing was because I've never been that busy with photography before. And people were very, very kind to me. Like they really liked my photography and they kept referring me to other organizations at Mac. So I just kind of grew my presence there and I got to meet so many incredible people and go to a lot of different events. And yeah, I'm self-taught, so it's really fun to be able to see that, I taught myself this and I never intended it. I guess I never thought I would be doing it as a side hustle business. And that fourth year, you can follow my Instagram, photo by Sachi. You can see all the different events that I went to and all the different people I met. And finally, Invite Health. So Invite Health is probably my biggest passion project to date and something that's very, very personal to me. It's really hard to kind of, I'll try to summarize as much of it as I can into a few seconds, but I think I mainly started it because of my own experiences with trying to navigate different careers outside of it, after graduating health sci. Because like I said, I applied to med school and I was not really sure what I was going to do. And one of the reasons I applied to med school was because I didn't know what else existed. So it was my frustration with not knowing what other career pathways there was. I also started Invite Health because I wanted to promote more paid opportunities in health sciences because I've seen a lot of my friends and a lot of my classmates do a lot of unpaid work as a way to just boost their resume to get into med school. And it's so frustrating for me to see because med school is really expensive. And like, I feel like these students, they work so hard and they should be paid for what they're doing, but they're not. And I don't see this happening in other fields like tech and engineering, especially. I'm like, people are not getting unpaid. Like, look how much money they're making, like as an intern. So that was another thing I wanted to address with Invite Health. And I think Invite Health just also allows me to just meet more people. I do enjoy meeting people a lot and getting to hear their stories. And Invite Health was just a kind of a good like conversation starter in a way. I did write a piece about like why I started Invite Health. I can share that with you too, because it's definitely a lot more detailed than that. And yeah, now I like to do lots of interviews with people to show what kind of different experiential learning opportunities there are within the health sciences and what careers you can do like outside of medicine and research. Like I've interviewed people who are doing like global health, who are doing consulting, who do writing, who work for the government. So it's really, really cool to see. And I have a lot of ideas that I want to execute this year because I took a little break from Invite Health and I started at Oxford. And I'm very, very excited to bring that back this year and show everyone the different ideas that I have.
Sounds like a one-stop shop, something that you could have definitely used
Yeah.
in your time at school. And I think that's a common theme. I've interviewed a lot of people on my podcast, and a lot of them, although they are in grad school, although they may be working really high paying, high prestigious jobs, they seem to have some passion project that is rooted in a frustration that they had as a student. Which I think is so inspiring that, instead of just going through it and saying, oh, that sucked, so many people are doing something about it. And I think that really is a benefit to the future students to come. Congratulations on starting Invite Health. I'm sure you will continue to achieve success the more time you put into it. You graduate in 2025. What would you like to be doing after, both professionally and personally? Are there any hobbies you like to keep up with or continue?
I'm still figuring this out, what I'm going to do after graduation. I think I decided that I'll probably be working, so I'll try to like earn a living wage. And I do like being someone who has been living abroad, like away from Canada now for a few months now. And I think I want to continue living abroad, and living abroad is not the cheapest. So I definitely want a job that can help me sustain that. In terms of what sector, I'm not exactly sure yet, but I also know that for myself, like even though I'm like in grad school, I have these other passion projects that I'm doing. So I'm probably going to do that after graduation too. Like I'm not going to be someone who's just going to be tied down to one thing. Like maybe I'll have a full-time job, but I'm going to be pursuing like other passion projects as well. Like maybe I'll go, like one of the things I do with my photography is I like to go up to people, like strangers on the street, and like ask them to take pictures, kind of like very humans in New York style. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll continue working on Invite Health and doing a bit more media and journalism. Maybe I'll do more like content creation. Maybe I'll just become like a full-time like cafe reviewer, go to all these different cafes and just review like their matcha. or review their pastries and just talk to people. I have been interested recently in looking into like journalism. I haven't thought about it fully yet, but I think it combines a lot of my interest in like communications and being able to amplify people who are doing really, really good work to larger audiences. But I also know for myself, like long term, I am going to be I'm going to work for myself, like I'm going to be an entrepreneur because I don't see myself working in like a corporation or for another company in the long run. I just know for me, like the way that I work, I have a very specific way that I like to work. And entrepreneurship allows me to be very creative and kind of have a lot of control over my time that I think other jobs just personally just don't serve that need for me. But I don't know if that'll happen right after graduation because again, I want to continue living abroad and just try these different work experiences.
And yeah, your hobbies. What do you like doing now? Is there anything that you learned being in the UK? Like any new like personal things that you like to do?
Um, so I think this term I'm gonna try taking a language course. I've been practicing Japanese on Duolingo now because I don't know any other languages. So I thought I could learn Japanese because I watch a lot of Japanese shows and I find Japanese a little bit easier to learn than other languages I've attempted in the past. So hopefully taking some courses with that. I tried bartending last term. I didn't continue with it, but I thought it was really cool to just try. I don't know if I'll continue with I usually just go to the gym because I have access to a gym here, so I wouldn't say like I guess yeah, going to the gym is also a hobby. I like to also like review different food places and go to like local places and support them. And through like my Instagram pages, like my photography page and my Sachi and Oxford page, I like to document the different places that I go. So photography now is more of like my creative hobby again, rather than a side hustle business, like taking pictures of strangers and then documenting their stories. I like to journal a lot. I think it really grounds me and helps me reflect and reminds me to be grateful for the opportunities that I have here. I don't know, and I just like to walk around and like London is an hour away by train, so I love going to the art galleries there, going to try the different local foods, and I really, really love to travel.
You are a very interesting person. Just listing all of those things off like one by one, I was like, wow, that like bartending, like alongside like doing your master's in a new country, like that's and I love that you are sharing, small businesses and your love of food and turning it into something good on your accounts, which I have a Instagram as well. So I gotta take
Yes.
food, I gotta get the hashtags. I know the grind. Sometimes like all you want to do is eat, but showing that appreciation for the food, for the business,
Yes.
and just like for yourself, like taking that moment to think
Exactly.
like I'm very lucky to be eating this food right now is
Yeah.
it's a very like grounding thing to do.
It is, and that's where I think like social media is a very great tool. Like I have a very love-hate relationship with social media because I think I spend too much time on it. And sometimes it does create like negative self-esteem with me, but also you could do so many great things with it. Like I've met so many people through it, and you get to be really creative. Like I love how accessible like photography and videography education is through social media, and that you can really like amplify these also like small businesses and enterprises through social media. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really, really great.
Finally, I have the last question for this pod. What advice do you have for ambitious science students looking to explore careers in grad school beyond medicine?
A few different things. One, I'm going to self-plug and say read Invite Help. Like learn from students who are in positions honestly not that far from you. Like they might only be a few years older than you, maybe a few years younger than you. But learn about their experiences because a lot of them like to go in depth. I would say two, depending on where you are in the stage of your undergrad career or maybe grad career, try different job experiences because it's one thing to take a course in a topic you're interested in, and it's another thing to actually work in that field. Like for example, like I took a health policy course and I never did so I took a health policy course and I was like, okay, like I'm not sure if this is really interesting like to me, but I didn't get like job experience with that. But I think if I had job experience, it would definitely change my perception of what like policy looks like. Um, and like I took like a health entrepreneurship course as well in undergrad, but being an actual entrepreneur, building my own ventures, just kind of reinforce like, okay, this is actually something I'm really, really interested in, or talking to people who started their own health ventures too. So try to get as much relevant job experience as you can, even if it's only for a summer or even if it's only for a few months, because like you don't know until you try. Like you don't know if you're gonna like something until you try it. And it can go the other way too. Like if you get a job and you really, really dislike it, well, then you only have to work in it for a few months. And it's that now you know, like you don't have to go waste your time pursuing this field because now you already know that you don't like it. So try to get as much job experience as you can. And I would also say just reach out to people, like cold message. LinkedIn is so powerful. I met so many people through like cold messaging. And a lot of the times if you reach out to other students, they're willing to help you. I would say that don't try and reach out to professionals who have like very high titles because they might be too busy to help you and they might not understand your position as well. Whereas like students who are just a few years older than you, they have been in your position maybe only like 1 to 5 years ago. And they have a bit more time on their hands, I usually find, and they're more willing to help because they know that like what it's like to be in your position, like as a student, trying to figure out different careers or what to do after graduation. So to summarize, I would say read invite help, get as much job experience as you can because doing something like do it immersing yourself in that field is going to be very different than learning about it theoretically in a course. And the third thing is reach out to as many people as you can and have coffee chats and cold chats with people. It can be intimidating at first, but after you do a few, it honestly just becomes very natural and you just treat it more as like working towards your future, just making new friends.
And I think we'll leave it there. We have a lot of good links for all of you down below with Sachi's LinkedIn, her Instagram, as well as Invite Health and a Notion about applying to grad. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Let me know if you want more STEM related content. We haven't had an engineer yet. We're 2 for health science, so I think that's pretty good. Yeah, thank you so much, Sachi, for sharing. Well, you were just so interesting. Everything about grad school, moving abroad, and founding your businesses. We wish you the best of luck, and I'm sure everyone will connect with you and stay up to date with your journey. So good luck everyone with your own. I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.